review for Am I Racist? Just got out of the theater for Am I Racist, which is a documentary, kind of mockumentary by the Daily Wire, which is, if you're not familiar with it, it is a more conservative type of news media. I think it's mostly YouTube, but they do have a streaming service. And so the whole documentary is pretty much Matt Walsh trying to see if he's racist. Apparently there's a lot of racist claims by the media, pretty much publishing a lot that there was hate crimes and stuff like that, and the systemic racism, and so he goes out and talks to people. He starts off with talking to more liberal-minded people, and then eventually goes to the more conservative ones, and so you're kind of getting an idea for what it is. But that's the premise of it. It was interesting, but it definitely was like a more conservative bias, obviously, because it is there are some approaches I wish would have been done differently. You?
Well, I napped through a lot of it, but I felt like at the very beginning of it, it wasn't what I expected. I was telling Sal that I was actually very nervous to see it, because Sal is the one who's very politically inclined and very into...
It's very easily politically overloaded.
Politically exhausted, because, yeah, it's exhausting to me. And so, that's a really good way of politically overloaded. My funnel for politics is a small funnel, so is very easily filled up. And Sal has a very high tolerance for that. Anywho, it was done in a way that I actually, I don't know, I think I would typically be annoyed by it, but I wasn't annoyed. Like, it was funny. I thought that it just showed a lot of people's stupidity. And, or I don't know if that was me just thinking more cynical, or I don't know what it was, but I like the way that they did it. And, well, I saw a few, and now I was like, oh my gosh, I thought it was so crazy that, well, can we just talk about it?
Yeah.
Freely, I guess, is that, I mean, all the people that were typically supposed to have been affected by racism weren't affected by it. And it was in the heads, like, the guilty conscience of all of these other white folks who were trying to find the seed of their racism. And he made it very comical.
Right.
And that was helpful.
Yeah, it was a funny, entertaining movie. I enjoyed it. Like, if you know what you're getting yourself into.
But
like,
I had no idea.
It had a very comedic element. You knew he was going to make fun of certain things and whatever, especially from the conservative standpoint, and so on and so on. But I guess sometimes, at least from what I see with like conservative leaning comedy versus liberal leaning comedy, and this is also not well, it's a generalization, but like it seems typically that way. Like, sometimes when conservative comedy comes out, it doesn't, not that it's not not that it's not funny, but it almost comes out as sometimes like not a joke, like kidding, not kidding kind of deal. Like you're poking at it, and you're displaying it as a joke, but subconsciously kind of seems like you're not joking, and vice versa. And sometimes not all the time, but like in liberal stuff, it seems like they make a joke and it was a joke and it ends and that's it. Like they don't actually mean it. Like they'll say it, but don't actually mean it. I don't feel like there's intention behind it. But that's the way I see it. So anyway, that's kind of what part of the parts that annoyed me. So he tries to kind of infiltrate this group of like who are trying to
tone down for it. I was like, oh, this is palatable. And that's where, but I didn't know that it was supposed to. Like, I thought that that's how his character was.
Right.
Because you're familiar with it and I'm not. And so I didn't know. I was like, who is he? What do you mean?
Yeah, like
what's going on?
In one of the groups that they found out who his actual, like, real person was, like, you're Matt Walsh, and so that's when he got kicked out. But that's also the one where he was being, like, kind of extra annoying, and so it's like, it didn't come off as real. I guess that's the way he sees the people in there, but he was also doing it a little bit leveled up, and like they can kind of see through it, like you're not one of us kind of deal. And so that's where I kind of thought it was, and you should just, I don't know, blend it in a little better. Like nobody else was kind of doing that, but whatever. So that's that. The other thing I like and dislike is, to me, kind of shows a little more, but like, I think the liberal side is more willing to kind of do introspection, like look within themselves to find the cause of a problem, and am I part of the problem, or and that type of stuff. And like to me, I think I've found a lot of it's very psychological, so it's like a lot of inner work and so on. But to me, sometimes they also make it sound like this inner work is also very kooky, or like almost, I don't know the term for it exactly. Do you get what I mean?
Kind of do.
Like it's like a, not necessarily witchcraft or like anything like that, but it's very outside of the normal. I guess what is. I don't even want to say normal either, because like I don't even know what.
I don't even want to call it spiritual.
Yeah, it's not that either, but it's like
hypnotherapeutic. No, not that either. I don't know what the word is for it just yet. I haven't. It was like, okay, so you have yourself, and then you have your other self's thoughts. Are you talking about like that kind of thing?
No, I mean,
and then how they're like, okay, well, you have to bring it together.
I mean, in general, how many from the ones he showed, how many white people were willing to say that they were racist or whatever, or willing to accept that they're racist.
A lot of them did.
Yeah, and so to me, that I like the inner work. That like, okay, like kind of open-mindedness, or like, okay, I'll listen to this, or kind of go along with it a little bit, or whatever. But then I think he does a good job also at seeing how far it'll go. Like, I can see doing a little bit of inner work, but like then I feel like there's no limit for it. Like someone can just keep feeding you in one direction. Like, yeah, like you kind of plant the seed, like your white people are racist, and then you just kind of keep growing, and then you're building this tree out of that seed that like, oh yeah, I'm a super mega racist, and I'm a jerk for it, and so on.
What I thought was funny is that they would put on these different things, like different dinners or different classes, and the amount of money that they were paying was outrageous for it. And what I also thought was very interesting on that is that it was all people of color, right? So I think it was like, I don't even know what she was. Was she an Indian lady? Or a Mexican lady.
Yeah, there's several scenes that were like kind of mind blowing. I was like
black ladies, and this one black lady got paid $50,000 to sit down with him and talk with him
Yeah.
about just her experience and like how come two of her daughters had a racist Sesame Street character
Right.
go off of them. And I was like, oh my gosh, $50,000, way to milk it. And these other dumb white people were paying them. Like, they were paid, and these poor people, I am calling them dumb because it was ridiculous. Like, oh my gosh, I am so racist. Here, take my money. Like giving these what, I don't know, it was comical. I actually thought that it was fake.
Yeah.
Like, the majority of it, I'm really, really not sure if it was real, that what we saw right now. Because it was outrageous.
Yeah, and one of them, the dinner scene where they're all at dinner or whatever, he has to, because it was only for white women, and so he wanted to find a way to infiltrate, and so he became the waiter at that dinner or whatever to try to listen in and whatever, and so on and so on. And like, well, one of the ones that the ones hosting it that's where the Indian lady and the black lady were hosting the dinner and kind of telling all the white women how they were racist and so on. And it's not like pointing fingers, but it is kind of like
at the beginning I felt like it wasn't like pointing fingers, and then later on I thought it was just absolutely brutal. Like, you all are racists.
Yeah.
And you know that you are, and this is your fault, and you have to accept responsibility. And I was like, holy cow, these ladies are listening to them bitch at them? I don't know how they did that.
And they paid to go get
they
bitched
paid
at.
For yes!
And so...
that's how come I'm thinking, like, this wasn't real.
Right. And, maybe it wasn't, because I started thinking, like, how did they get the camera crew in there, like, from the wait staff team or whatever. But anyways, the girl, the host, one of the Indian ladies, starts going off of like how the problem is so bad in this country that we need like almost pretty much like a mass reset. Like, this country needs to like burn to the ground first before any.
She was saying about racism, and then she was like, America is awful, and I'm like, then
and it's like and those are some of the things that get pointed out in like the kind of the dichotomy of the situation. Like, you don't understand even your own privilege right now, that you get to do this as a minority person or whatever, and get to talk about and get to point at white women and get paid for it.
Yes,
like,
it was like per person per dinner, it was like $7,000 or something ridiculous.
How else are you gonna make money? You think if the country's burnt to the ground, people are gonna be paying you this much for you to bitch at them? Like,
oh no. It was incredible. It really was, like, it's unbelievable. I'm not sure that I believe it. It's
right. And so I guess the biggest takeaways for me. Oh, and then, well, actually, before I get to any of that, he also went to like the deep south, where like it's supposed to be more racist than anything, and so he starts asking people, how are you handling your whiteness, or how are you decentralizing your whiteness, how are you trying to, I guess, essentially be less white so that you're not as racist or something. Yeah. And so they're kind of like, I'm not, like, why would I do that or whatever. And they started just asking them about racism, and it reminded me of Borat also, now that you mentioned that, because they were like super
cool.
Yeah, like no, like, I don't care about anybody's color of their skin. It's like, they're black, okay, great, they're my friend. Like, I'm looking at the human interaction and so
he tried to incorporate what he had learned to the other, and he's like, no, you have to care that they're black, because now you're decolorizing.
Yeah, and
then they're like,
colorblindness,
but my best friend is black, and then he's like, well, And what do you think about that? And the other guy's like, I love him. I love that he's black. I love that he's a different culture than me.
Right, and I think that's been the best translation for me, because we had talked about this once with one of our friends, and Hispanic or black or whatever, and it's like the whole color blindness thing sounds like everyone's treated equal, and I get it, but then it was supposed to be like, I want you to see my humanity, but I don't want you to see, like, I don't want you to treat me differently because of my culture. And I think that the way he said it made the most sense. Does that make sense? Like, don't treat me different because, like, I'm still human, but, like, don't treat me different because my culture is different. He's like acknowledge it, and I know that I'm different because of my culture. And I was like, okay, I can understand that. And I guess I hadn't had it explained that way. But either way, even talking to white people and black people, and like, you feel like there's a racism problem in America? And they said no, and pretty much the majority like, no, I don't think there's a problem or whatever.
Like, we all bleed the same colors.
Yeah, that was one that kept coming up from different people. And again, this is a conservative leaning, so whether there was people that did think it was racist, probably excluded it from it. So again, take it as you will. One of the other ones I thought was fascinating, they were doing like hate crime statistics, and like it's like a small percentage of like out of all the crimes that happen and whatever our hate crimes are, it was like a super small percentage. I forget how many crimes were committed a year, and I think there was only like 6,000 hate crimes, and like, I guess that's still a lot, but like over the span of it, this is like the media posted, because like, I guess it's a different crime news, and so like, okay, let's post this one, but upon putting that out there, it makes it seem like it's more than what it is. So, to be continued from our conversation, having a snack after getting home, because this one's a longer one, I think. we need, or I wanted to talk more about it. Actually, I forgot where we left off. But anyway, part of the thing, I think a lot of we had talked about them going down to the south, and they were saying it wasn't racist or whatever, and it's fun. I actually remember this conversation with an old coworker. That, he was very conservative leaning, and I was more liberal leaning, and I asked him once, like, the liberal being more identity politics and whatnot, and asked him, like, what do you think the world would be like if we didn't have any labels, like? And he kind of paused for a second and said, "Dang, well, I guess that would be like, that's what I would picture like heaven being like." And I was like, okay, like, that's fair.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I was like, that seems like such a simple solution, that why the hell don't we try to do that instead? Like, you can just easily strip like labels from calling people like whatever it is, and that seems so simple to me, but yet, like, so I guess I don't know why it's that unachievable, and why we don't do that. But I do think labels cause more harm than good, or at least right now they do. Like, even Trump supporter or not, there's already a certain reaction people get from that. And like, one thing I think is fascinating too is with like introspection and the psychology part. Like, I think it, with like Trump supporters or not, or whatever it is, like it diminishes the situation as to like how they became a Trump supporter. You're almost making it sound like like your background or whatever led you up to this isn't valid either. Like you don't know what you're talking about, so I think a lot of these things are symptoms of a deeper thing rather than just like, and we keep trying to just treat the symptom of racism or all these labels or whatever it is. Like, why are we so um, easily worked up about it? And also another thing for me is like, I think I realized that having a reaction makes you almost, well, like you have control. Well, maybe not full control, but like getting control of your reaction is also something more that is within your power than more than people think, I guess. More than you think. What?
I just saw a meme. I was like, I was really proud of myself today because I didn't react or I didn't say anything in this conversation or whatever. Like everything that I wanted to say, I didn't say because it was going to be rude. And then it shows my face during the entire conversation, and it's like I'm doing all kinds of stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's me, because I won't say anything verbally, but then when it comes to the actual reaction of like a physical reaction, my face can't control itself.
And I guess partially by reacting, I don't know, it's like you're partially agreeing with what the person says. Like if somebody calls me an idiot and I don't think I'm an idiot, then like why would I react? Like that would mean I partially believe this person. Like why? It's like they see through me. Like, oh, I am an idiot, but you're not supposed to know that kind of deal. You know what I mean?
That's why, like in that kind of situation, if you were to laugh, okay,
Yeah.
sure, that's what you think of me. Like if you, I don't know, then why would you be having that conversation with that kind of person if they think you're an idiot?
And so I guess I enjoyed the movie for entertainment purposes. But sometimes I think about the people that are going to see it, and like you can just run with either side of it. Like you're either going to get really pissed off about it or can get like really hyped up about it. Like, yeah, see, like all these labels are stupid, and your liberal side is like, see how stupid it is here, and like it's not really doing much for bridging the gap, I guess. Like you're still just feeding one side more than the other, and like how likely are you to change someone's mind? And sometimes I don't know if like that's the purpose of this, or you're just reinforcing the people that already believe this. Like, what's the point of these documentaries? I would think the purpose of a documentary is to inform you and to try to show what you're missing from the big picture. But when you kind of mock it a little bit, like you're just feeding your own side, like your own.
But this was a mockery.
That's right. That's what I'm saying, and that's like that's part of the stuff I don't like about it. Like all this has validity to it, but the way it's presented still just ends up mocking, and like it's not going to really change anything. You're just still reinforcing the people that believe what you believe.
Well, of course. I mean, like in this aspect, it completely pats itself on the back in that they spent so much money to get to the bottom of nothing. They didn't, like, I didn't feel like there was any conclusive information. However, what it did show me is that they were privileged enough to be able to do so. They were privileged enough to be able to make this documentary and pay that much money to exploit different situations and to exploit different people.
I guess too, like in the end too, I'm like, the whole thing was about like how white people are racist, but like by turning them into the bad guy, doesn't that just make you equally racist kind of deal? Like even though you're acknowledging the racism or whatever, like. And see, that was a
missed opportunity too, because she ends up talking about how people, doctors, Nazi doctors, were okay with themselves with what they did during World War II and whatever. And I said, but I forgot if there was an actual term for it, but you kind of like create two selves, and
like a shadow self and
yeah, and so like
yours.
that was my shadow self that did that. Like I myself, like the other one, would never do something like that, and so I understand that from the psychological standpoint. And the guy was trying to get her to say, well, he's trying to say, well, like, I just want to get rid of that self. It's like, why can't I just kind of cut it away? And it makes it sound contradictory
because
she
you're
says,
ignoring it.
yeah. And so she's saying you have to kind of mesh it in with yourself and acknowledge it. But they made it kind of sound like, again, kind of kooky, like, ooh, my shadow self. Like, how could I? Like,
It sounds extremely uneducated.
Right. Like it. I wouldn't even say uneducated. Well, like, yeah, I guess uneducated on the psychological standpoint. Like, and I think that's kind of
that was the point, though. That's what I feel like they interviewed her to exploit it.
Right.
Like, look, she doesn't even know what the hell she's talking about. Look how dumb she looks.
To me, that's a problem. Like, not a symptom of like our lack of psychological understanding of how we deal with things and not deal with things, and so on and so on. So she was saying that you have to acknowledge that self and kind of mesh it in with yourself. But the guy's like, why would I want to mesh in with myself that I'm a racist or whatever? Like, that's my shadow self. Like, why would I? And from the psychological standpoint, and again, I'm not have any credentials in psychology, but I am very fascinated by it, and I do like read on it and whatever. But my understanding of it is like just acknowledgement. Acknowledgement of a problem always just means like, don't ignore it. Like, just by ignoring it doesn't mean it's going to go away. And I think that was kind of the point of the movie too. Like, by ignoring racism is not going to go away, but also I think just creating the labels is kind of what started it to begin with. So, and I like that point that like race was kind of totally created by us. Like, it's not necessarily a quote unquote natural thing. Like, we are from different places or whatever, but why did we have to add the label that you're from a different place or that you have this and that? Like, that does seem like a very man-made thing. And so like, kind of, who cares and whatever. But the meshing in with itself was to like kind of come to peace with it. Like, I did do those things, like kind of taking accountability for it. Like, that was something I have done and may have been terrible or not terrible, or whether it was me or ancestors or whatnot. Like, it's pretty much a non-ignoring thing. I would say it's almost the same reason, like, if people don't want to break down statues or whatever, like, you're wanting to acknowledge the history. Like, okay, so that's kind of the same thing. Like, acknowledge the history that's within you. Like, why are you trying to demolish it? I think that's kind of contradicting in that same sense too.
Well, that's what one of the men actually did. He's like, my grandpa, my uncle,
Right.
and my granddad were all part of the KKK. And he's like, and you? He's like, are you a racist? And he's like, absolutely not. I have black friends. You are a human. You come to me, like...
You even tell him, if you were black and came up here with the same question, kind of be like...
That's not what I wanted to drink.
And so, yeah. My bigger issue with it was like trying to make the psychological parts of the movie, I guess, how we think, and like the people willing to try to do some introspection, like you kind of demonize them or whatever. Like, I understand it sometimes it takes it too far, and maybe that's where we got to try to find the line as to like, okay, like this is going a little too nuts. Or too far in one, like it's starting to get too hypothetical and like we're not going to get anywhere. But I think there should be some parameters on both sides that like, okay, try to keep it within this and maybe we can get somewhere. But
and I liked that a lot of the younger generation when he interviewed a lot of the younger generations, they're like, no, man, like, you're the one that's being racist right now. Like, I'm fine with my whiteness. Like, I loved that guy.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, what an intelligent kid. He's like, he's like, well, you know, we're all on our journey. And he's like, you have a lot of journeying to do.
I thought it was funny too with he got his certification or whatever that he kept talking about, the DEI, the diversity, equity, and I forgot.
Certified, yeah.
But to me, that's just another label you're adding on top of yourself to like either differentiate or like not, and like our primalistic mind just keeps wanting to be included in something else, but by being included in something else, you're going to be excluded from something else. I think that's where I also think it keeps just beating the problem like it's not.
That was probably purposeful on their part to make you think that exact thing. It's interesting. I don't really have a problem with racism, and I think that's how come I was able to see it. So it wasn't a huge. I wasn't very passionate about it because of my views, I guess.
Because what?
Because of my views.
Yeah, I don't know. I really felt like I was able to see this from like a outsider's perspective. Like, I don't think I'm too involved in like racial whatever. Like I see it as a spectator kind of deal. Like
we've never really been involved in a whole lot of it because we live in a bubble over here.
That's true.
I'm sure it's alive and well.
Right.
But we don't see it. It isn't important.
How we experience it, yeah, but I wouldn't say it's like something that's like constantly on my mind, or even
I was watching
the
this other
percentage of what TV like equal amount, like the amount of times, like percentage wise, the amount of times I've experienced it versus the amount of times it's shown on TV, like that's way unproportional.
Oh, so I saw this TV show, and it was pretty much like how girls, like address problems within a relationship, and how guys address problems within a relationship. Excuse me, and the guys go up to each other and they're like, "You did it, boom, boom," and they like hit each other, and they're like, "Okay, we're good, okay." And then the girl's like, "Oh, it's okay," and they make everything like they sugarcoated everything, and then they went their separate ways. She's like, "Yeah, so this is what's gonna happen. We're just not gonna talk for 3 days, and then all of a sudden we're gonna come back and we're gonna be a little bit snarky together,
Right.
and then everything will be fine after that." And then the guys are like, "No, that is not how you do this. You guys have to fight it out." And then the girls ended up they ended up getting into this. Yes, exactly.
No way.
They ended up in the hospital because they beat the heck out of each other, right? And then they're like, "Wow, well, it really feels good to like actually have discussed all of these problems that we had been having since we were like 14." And so it kind of leads me down that path. And it's if you do have an issue with the way that a situation is either addressed or some kind of racial tension or something, I'm wondering, like, is it better to be like, "Hey, were you meaning that to be a racist remark?"
Right.
But at the same time, like, it can be so dangerous.
Yeah,
and so I'm wondering.
But it's also timing of that too. Like, you're not just gonna say that in front of like a group of people too, because then that puts them on the spot and puts them on the defensive too. To, like, do it in private, where like they're gonna be kind of give you a more honest opinion and not a socially appropriate answer because they're in front of people and like I'm expected to say this thing or whatnot. Like, get to the truth. If you really want to know the truth, if you really want to know the question.
Yeah, and kind of honestly, it makes me a little bit sad that I didn't have this knowledge when I was younger. My best friend is black. Like, I had dated a couple of black guys and took them to family gatherings, and I knew that I could never stay in that relationship or like maintain those relationships forever because I knew that it wasn't accepted. And I was like, dang it. Like now, if I would have known that, I wish I could have told my family, like, are you meaning this to be a racial thing or is it the person, or, to discuss that, without being crazy, without just being like, without an over emotional, response.
One of my bigger things I think I've started to see patterns in people and whatever is the intentions versus outcomes. We always talk about this too, is that, what's the saying kind of, it's like we judge others on their action and we judge ourselves based on our intentions. And so sometimes I think we also we read too much into things sometimes when like somebody does say something and then like you assume that it was said in which way, but then like that, how you said, did you mean this to sound racist? Did you mean this to sound rude? Did you mean this to sound whatever? Like you kind of.
Would you please rephrase that?
Yeah, you give them a chance to clarify, and then like now both statements you can kind of combine them and see like, okay,
this is what it was.
Yeah, this may be leaning in this direction more than what I thought it was leaning in this other direction, and so yeah, I think maybe we read too much into some of those things.
Gosh, but at the same time, like it's like how I said, like wouldn't you challenge it? Wouldn't you say like, hey, some people are irrational, like they can't have an educated conversation about it. Yeah, right. I meant it to be racist because this is why. Oh, well then I'm not going to come around here anymore. I'm not going to talk to you.
Right. But I think that's what I always say too, is like, don't ask questions you don't want the answer to. Like if you really want to know, like if you're going to ask someone, did you mean this to sound racist? You got to be prepared that they might say yes. And then what are you going to do? Like, are you going to react again? So you got to be prepared to, how am I going to react if they say yes? I'm like, oh shit. Then you can give them a chance to clarify, depending on how your relationship is, if you are curious or not curious, or that's grounds for terminating the relationship or whatever. But that was something else I saw too, is like how like you don't have to accept everything about the person to like love the person or whatever. And I was like, damn, that's kind of true too. Like I don't know. It's another thing, we think all things are even kind of deal. Like this part is like liking your personalities is like this big, but then liking, I don't know, something else is another or less important thing. I think that's kind of true. But then also you go back to memories you had together. Is this thing going to be enough to
compensate
for all this other stuff, all the good stuff you do have together?
Yeah.
And so and again, that's your personal choice, but it's like kind of take those things into account. And speaking of, I guess, account too, is like I think part of it is another thing we don't have a lot of in our at least what it seems like is accountability. And I don't know if that's what this is trying to do, is like trying to show accountability for why these problems are here. If there is a racist problem, like the whole correlation doesn't always equal causation. So if there is obviously some numbers, if you're taking statistics on the situations, like some situations may show higher numbers, higher occurrences of certain things. Like that doesn't always mean it's because of what you think it is, kind of deal. All right, we gotta wrap it up because we have to record another video too, and we're already running out of time. We have another engagement. But I was saying about accountability. I think a lot of times we also don't want to, like, nobody wants to take responsibility for things, and especially again, intentions versus outcomes. If you didn't do this on purpose, it doesn't mean the outcome wasn't the same. Like you could, I don't know, be preparing a meal and the meal sucks. Like you didn't intend for the meal to suck, but that's kind of, that's kind of what happens. And I think it's kind of sometimes some of the situations, like you don't want to take accountability because that wasn't your intention. Like, oh, it wasn't my fault or whatever. Like, well, part of it is your fault. Like you're the one like putting this together. You're the one that mixed ingredients, put it in the oven, or whatever the case is. Like, it didn't just happen on its own. Like, something kind of set off the chain of events. And so I don't know if that's the whole white, what was white fragility? That was the whole thing, the kind of white guilt or whatnot. It's like it's trying to take accountability for certain statistics, I guess, that have been said enough to say, like, this is your fault. And it's like, okay, some people are like, okay, I'll be willing to kind of take accountability for that. And part of that I appreciate, like, okay, it wasn't entirely my fault, but I could see how I could have fed into it, like, not directly, but maybe indirectly, like, because I do this or not do this, like what is it? Inaction is also. There was a Stoic one that said something like, also, like, standing by is also like standing by and doing nothing is also like.
What did they call it? Yes,
complicit or something like that. But so I can appreciate in that sense, and I think that's where sometimes people miss the point on the other side too.
And it's so hard too because, like, you're grouping these people into groups, but it could just be a person, like a few people that are the rotten bunch, and I don't know, you screw it up for everybody.
It was all just too well, like the lady that wrote the book, White Fragility or whatever. It's a book that keeps coming up in the movie. She seemed like such a nice lady at the end or whatever. Like, so that he finally has an interview with her or whatever. And he brings his black friend in, and so Matt Walsh brings his black friend in, and he's trying to kind of not prove a point, but like have him there, like, so she can see him and like acknowledge him or whatever, and like he's like, so kind of what can I do and whatever, and so he gives him money. Matt Walsh gives his black friend money, and then it's like, and so she thought it was weird. It's like, is this like She's like, what do you mean it's weird or whatever? It's like, and then so she asks the black friend, is like, are you okay with this? Like, are you okay taking money for this or whatever, or for like my guilt or whatever, like to try to make this better for you? That's why he was kind of giving it to him. He's like, I never turned down cash, and so she's also like, do you want me to give you money too? And so she's like, okay, I'll see if I have a few bucks or whatever.
What the heck?
Yeah, but she seemed so like nice about it. At least I thought she seemed nice about it, and like it wasn't so much even as guilt anymore. It was just kind of like, okay, kind of that makes you feel a little better. Like that makes your day a little better. Then like I'll do it or whatever. But
what in the world?
Yeah, it was.
That is so weird.
But I guess again showing the extremes that people are willing to go to. But now I just kind of put those two and two together. That like you're giving this out of guilt, and I'm wondering if that room full of white ladies at the dinner are willing to pay those amounts of money out of guilt. Because
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, like, or at least like, the least I could do is go be yelled at, go pay to be yelled at, or
and tell your friends.
Yeah.
I pay these colored ladies to yell at me, and now
I feel better about myself. I don't know. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Recommend? We'll go watch it or no?
I mean, you don't need to pay money to go to a theater and watch it now. It'll come out on streaming.
All right. Yeah, wait till it comes out on streaming.
Yeah, streaming. You can.
Nothing.
But you know what? It is fun to hear the reactions of other people.
That is true.
So maybe,
And see if you can not react if people are laughing in places that you think shouldn't.
Oh, I was laughing hysterically. But
we had like three couples in the theater. It was a pretty empty theater, and it was pretty early. So
some of it is really funny though. Pay attention to his ice cream cone.
I think we were all pretty good sports about it. Oh, the ice cream. That was funny.
Mm-hmm. We should put a Michael Jackson.
That's right. All right, we'll leave it there.
All right, bye.